guess is that that's an automatic system. Looking at the weather forecast, but thought I would throw that mention that out there. One of the things you'll notice is next general meeting is over 20 minutes earlier than we usually meet, because of course of the continuing holiday. So instead of meeting on the fourth Thursday, it's the third Thursday. You also notice that there is no December meeting listed up there. December, of course, is the holiday party. I don't know if we have a date for that yet. You probably need to look into renting the cabin or reserving the cabin.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for the date time. That typically happens first Saturday of first Saturday of December usually. And that's at the Snyder Cabin in Gage Park, which is the park the zoo is in. That's what I can anyway, so that's always highlighted the year calendars, potluck, free food, bring yourself, keep it coming. Other announcements, Gary, we need to say anything about the volunteers?
Just, I think we've narrowed down to 4, and it's because after multiple invitations, we've only had 4 stay with it, and they stayed with it pretty regularly. So they stayed with each of their appointments to do a session. They got at least 3 sessions done, and then a solo session at the end. The 2 KU students are through all of that, so they're kind of ready to go to go out on their own and their operation to some extent. And probably I'll have to babysit them for a few more times to make sure that not too bad happens. But they seem to be getting in there pretty good. So and we have a little bit of trouble rating, a little bit of trouble with her no machine. We haven't got that all squared away yet. Russ is helping her with that one. Caleb went on last night. We actually picked a target, but it's so deep in Milky Way and 20.9, so it wasn't an easy target, and we never did it. So, but he did go through the process and was able to kind of come to a conclusion.
This, by the way, for those of you that might listen probably are aware, but what Gary is talking about is part of one of the club's observing projects, which is the follow-up of new objects, and it's been going on for far longer than 25 years, so a very long-standing program that the club has run. Is using the club's main telescope, which is at the Parking Observatory, message, and these new observers are students, undergraduates, I guess.
Anybody under 60 young, so.
Especially young students. These are undergraduate students, and 2 from KU, 1 from here, from Washburn, and 1 from K-State, and apparently they are making good progress and will be ready to take turns as
they're coming along pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to have, a little blood in there to, keep us going. So anyway, I'm sure I'd like to get someone to come to the meetings,
Well, Caleb said he was going to try to make it tonight, so I don't know, maybe he'll show up.
I would offer to give him a meeting, man. I'd offer to give him a ride. I'm usually not in here. It's simple.
Kind of renegade again. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, other, it was just, okay, yeah.
Over 70 is kind of the majority, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say that. That means you're probably right on the median age. But anyway, all right, so, no other announcements?
my guess is that the rescheduled night may be the public astronomy night here at Fairfield.
We'll probably need to, touch base with Jan.
Again, what's the last name?
She was at the general meeting last month.
Just a couple of things, maybe turn off the lights. Couple of things, just by way of news, I guess, happenings. I saw this. I don't know if anybody's ever actually seen all three of these in one night, but I guess there's three visible ones right now. Unless I let you went out and look for.
Found lemon.
Did you find lemon?
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of hard ones.
That's what I understand. I've been kind of in the not so dark side areas over the last few.
Is Atlas near lemon?
I think Atlas, and it seems like Atlas was still in the southern hemisphere, just starting to climb up.
It's starting to be visible.
See it in the southwest right after sunset.
Yeah, I think that's
By the
about
time it was dark, I could see it, you couldn't.
it. Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty
What
close.
I asked is, some of my wide view shots, there was some raw, intense red object, and I can't figure out what it was, but it's above to the left of lemon.
Oh, yeah, there's a, I got a picture of it in here. It's a fairly bright, negative.
I think I've seen a couple pictures that have two comments in it. But anyway, this is kind of a rare opportunity to see three in one night. And speaking of Atlas, I ran across this paper. This was, I believe, in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Of course, Atlas, of course, is the interstellar planet, right? Arrived from outside of the solar system. What was kind of interesting about this is they were looking at water production. And, one of the theories about where the Earth's oceans came from was that it was transported to Earth in mostly common impacts, but possibly asteroid impacts as well. But that's what brought the Earth's water to the Earth, which I always found kind of interesting because it means that almost all of the water on Earth is therefore older than the Earth itself. Molecules are actually older than the Earth itself. They've been cycling through the Earth system for 4.5 billion years. You kind of think about the red hot water that's been and these things. But anyway, what was interesting about this was that it sort of confirmed that some of the processes that are associated with life are present in this interstellar object, which I guess is probably not conceptually surprising, but this is really visual evidence for that. The water that's outgassed from this object itself. Anyway, I thought this was kind of an interesting article. Like a lot of articles in the Astrophysical Journal Letter that I didn't quite understand all of it, but it was a really interesting thing. Other interesting stuff that you can see this, what's left of this month, I guess this is about done, but the Uranus rains have been more frequent this year. You gotta stay up kind of late to see them. You can probably run over the end of the window and see these until afternoon. But, and of course, we're right at the end of the peak of these, but I always thought this was kind of a new view display. Now, pretty rare, you gotta stay up pretty late to see them, but if you so desire, the rating is actually just to the left of the club, right? To the left of the line right and your left of the club. So if you want to hit some of those, I think I actually saw one. By the way, I also saw a meteor to the east last night, which was almost lost in the urban glare, the Kansas City glare. But it looked like a really, really long trail. It really surprised me because I couldn't think how long it would.
I was in the meeting last night, and I did some photos.
Did you catch some?
I thought there was several long there.
Do you know what they are? Are they named?
No, I was just disappointed because they might have known.
My brother got a we started getting into Lebanon, and there were three, I think, saw three used
Yeah.
going through that. Just
Well, what struck me about it was it was long. I wasn't looking for it. I was getting something out of the car and I saw it flash in the corner around it, and it was a long trail, which I guess indicates a fairly low angle of entry to the pass, which again, I'm curious enough, I guess, to follow up on that. I just don't think anybody else has seen anything like that.
And there's enough space way up there that I don't think even the smaller pieces coming down will make a pretty big load. And maybe it can be like keep track of.
Well, one of the things I've been hearing about, which I guess kind of aggravates my shun for the world, is a lot of the, whatever those internet satellites that Elon Musk has been putting, they're coming down at a fairly high rate. Apparently about 5 or 6 of them a week come down. And you're probably able to see those. Of course, I guess they're going up probably at a faster rate than but I thought that was pretty interesting, and I guess given the number of those things that are photobombing us these days, I feel a little sense of satisfaction. It's not for falling out of the sky. But I was actually quite, I knew they'd come down because, that's how it works, right? But, especially things that are in relatively low order like that. But, I was surprised by how fast they come down. Well, and they send them up 27 at a time or something like that. These launches are about every week, so that's anyway, another little item here, time flies, I guess, is the 10th anniversary of LIGO. If you remember, LIGO is the observatory that is used to detect gravity waves. It's basically a laser interferometer. So the way LIGO works is it's a picture of it. Basically, these two lasers in very, very, very long tunnels that are pointed at the right angles to each other. There's several of them. There's one in Washington, and there's one I believe in Tennessee somewhere. Now there are 3 of them around the world as well. But what happens when a gravity wave kind of passes through this, it sort of distorts the time that it takes for that laser to travel, and these things are so sensitive that they can pick up just those tiny little fluctuations and detect these gravity waves that come from black holes colliding, basically. So the first detection of one of these gravity waves was not that long after the array went online, the instrument went online, actually led to.
Very 2015, if I remember correctly, because I gave a talk about that.
And I think actually somebody got the Nobel Prize for predicting that these gravity waves should be out there. So, 10th anniversary of LIGO. And by the way, if you want to participate in this, you can. There are a couple of, I always like these citizen science things because something to do, keep me off the streets, I guess. Either one of these places, I actually linked to these, I guess I could follow this link here, but you can go to this is the Black Hole Hunters site, and you can help basically by checking the curves that these things make. It's one of those things where, things like machine learning and stuff isn't quite adapted to, there's really no substitute for the human brain for finding certain kinds of patterns. So if you really want to participate in this, it's been going on for a while now. You can go to this Black Hole Hunters site right here and participate. And then there's another one, there's Gravity Spot, which is kind of the same thing. There's a picture of the LIGO array, right? There's this long evacuated vacuum tunnels, basically these lasers travel through.
That's the one in Hanford.
That's the one in Washington. But this is an opportunity to participate in this project. All right, so that's all the news I have. I also was wanted to do like we've done times in the past and focus on just take a little bit of a look at constellation, and I was kind of thinking about ones I haven't done yet, and ones that would be visible, or at least becoming visible at this time of year. So I finally settled on this Pisces, and I picked it for a couple of reasons, one of which will be obvious at the end of the presentation. But this is a constellation that's becoming November in particular is a really good time to see this one. So I figured I would just take a little closer look at it. Pisces is a really big constellation. It's, I think, number 14 in terms of the total area of the sky that it covers. But it's also a really faint one, so it's not particularly always easy to see. I think the brightest star in Pisces is only about 3.5 magnitude, which is visible to the naked eye, but certainly not that bright. I think 6 is the limit for what you can see with the naked eye, so this one's quite a ways along on that scale. It's one of the constellations of the zodiac, right? Which means it lies along the ecliptic plane in the sky over the planet's orbit. Basically, it's actually really just sort of the plane of the disk on which almost all of this stuff is orbiting around the sun. So the ecliptic is divided up into these actually 13 constellations, of which 12 figure into the whole astrology thing, which makes me even more suspicious of astrology than I already was. Because what if they just forget about this other one? I mean, what if you're one of those people that happen to be born in that sign? Anyway, so there it is right there. You can see Pisces. It comes visible kind of in the late fall, continues on into the winter. In terms of how to find it, like I said, it's not a particularly easy one to find because it's pretty faint. It's kind of distinguishing characteristics of these two sort of asterisms associated with it. This one's called Serpent, and so if you want to find it, probably the easiest way is to find the Great Square of Pegasus, which is fairly easy to find, right? That's the combination of partly it's in Andromeda and partly it's in Pegasus. It's like Pegasus' tail, right? So if you find that Great Square of Pegasus, then you just kind of hop on over to the circlet and the constellation is.
Seems like Alpharat. Seems like Alpharat was in both Andromeda
And in both of them, the star, yeah. And I think we talked about Andromeda at the meeting once. It's one of those, dramatic stories from mythology, which to a certain extent Pisces is too, although it's not nearly as interesting a story, fun story. Depicts the fish, and actually the Pisces just means a fish, literally translates. The mythological story of it, like a lot of mythological stories related to constellations or asterisms or things in the sky, there's more than one version of it. One of the other things about this is that it's a really old constellation. It goes back far beyond the sort of Greco-Roman mythological thing that informs a lot of the naming of constellations. In fact, it goes back even to some very ancient civilizations. The Babylonians recognized it as a constellation. They saw it a little bit differently. They saw it as a fish and a bird that were bound together by a thread, basically, which is also kind of how a lot of these mythological representations see the two fish, right, attached by some kind of a thread, and that shows up when you see diagrams of the constellation itself. During the medieval period, in the Islamic world, recognized very much similar to the way that it's depicted in later mythology, and now it's two fish that are bound together by some kind of a cord. The ancient Egyptians, again, kind of the same, which always kind of suggests to me that it's not like a bunch of people sort of coincidentally came up with all this stuff, right? It probably suggests that these really ancient mythological stories got carried forward and changed through time through various civilizations. Even next to the Grimm's fairy tale. I don't know if you ever read the Grimm's fairy tale. When I was a kid, we had one of the things my dad did, I guess, read his money for us. And in those days, he sold books door to door. And And so we had all these books that I think my dad probably couldn't sell, so I just ended up keeping them. And one of them was Grimm's Fairy Tales, and I was just like, I enjoyed reading it down at the shelf every once in a while and reading. And one of those was The Fisherman and His Wife, which actually includes some imagery and some representation of the constellation. The Chinese also recognize it as slightly different. They don't actually see it as two fish, they basically see it as two flowers. So in the Chinese cosmological mythos, it's a little bit different, but it's the same basic collection of stars. The classical mythology story actually relates, this is one of the reasons why I selected, one of the few reasons why I selected Pisces to talk about a little bit, has to do with something that we talked about a little bit the last time I was here, the last meeting I was at, I believe it was in August. And we talked about the story behind pain, right? Capricorn. And the story of Pisces is kind of related to that. So if you remember that conversation, we talked about the war between the gods and the Titans, right? The Titanomachy, which was an older god, an older pantheon, the Titans, and a more recent pantheon, the Olympian gods, engaged in this war. It was basically started by the Titan goddess Gaia, the goddess who sends her sons, the Titans, to attack the Olympian gods. It was this huge and probably a crazy battle that happened. One of the things that happened was a terrible monster called the Typhon was released as a part of this. It was sent to basically attack Zeus and kind of had him on the roast a little bit. He was good by Zeus may not prevail in this battle. The Typhon was a pretty horrible monster. It's depicted in a bunch of different ways. But one of the most common was basically kind of a multi-headed snake dragon sort of thing, just kind of what you see here. Well, the bacon got saved by a couple of the gods. One of them was Pan, who basically distracted the Typhon long enough to allow Zeus or Apollo to basically get back in a fight. Of course, that attracted the attention of the Typhon, so Pan made his escape and turned into a goat-fish combination, and that's the origin of the Capricorn constellation. Pisces was actually due to the presence of a couple of the other Olympian deities, Aphrodite and Eros, who are, of course, both kind of better known as God and Goddess and love, basically. Depending on the story you read, they are either spouses or romantic partners, or they are mother and son, or in some of the more disturbing ones, both. But either way, it kind of distracted it. They kind of got into this battle enough that it kind of served as a bit of a distraction. But in the process of saving their own skin, they dived into a local body of water and then were converted into fish in order to save them, and as kind of a reward for their valor. And then, of course, enshrined in heavens is constellation Pisces. So that's where the Pisces constellation comes from. As far as things that you can kind of see in Pisces, again, it's kind of a big constellation, so there's quite a lot of objects contained in it. One of the ones that is a little interesting, this one right here, Stephen's Quintet. Anybody know what the connection is to Hollywood of Stephen's Quintet? Yeah. Anybody ever see the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Remember the angels that talk to George, I think his name is? The photograph that is used to represent the angels when they're talking to each other, a photograph of Stephen's Quintet. So,
Actually, I didn't see that.
did you? Okay. So next time you watch It's a Wonderful Life, which of course we all do at Christmas, right? It's just the kind of guy I am. We will, you'll get a chance to see it. who Steven was. He's sitting in a smile. I think this was actually one of the earliest astrophotos taken as well. Another kind of interesting galaxy is the Bullseye, which looks the way it does. It's weird looking thing. Looks the way it does because it was the result of a collision between it and a dwarf galaxy that essentially went right through it. I always find it interesting when galaxies collide, like a movie name or something with galaxies collide. They can actually collide and pass through each other without anything ever hitting, right? Because their stuff is so dispersed. But the gravitational effects are just
That's also called Moe's galaxy.
modes.
No, that's, no, BODE is M81. But no, I think that style, there was another one, and it was not that one, there was another one, by, H-O-G-U-E, I think.
Yeah, that sounds.
And he's famous for, probably the first, to really notice galaxy that has that kind of center in it, outside ring, nothing in between.
And they're not terribly unusual. I mean, it's not something, but there's many of them that are probably all a result of these collisions. What makes this one kind of distinctive is the collision kind of results in this sort of ring-like remnant, and this one has more rings than any other one of this has ever been observed. So this was kind of interesting.
It would be an individual one up there. Some time ago, it was a radio, it was just that the galaxy was a big circle. And you could see something in the middle. It looked like a kind of pyramid, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
Until we got a closer look. And it was one of these twin galaxies. The interesting thing is that about where that dot is inside, there was another ring galaxy you could see through.
Oh, wow.
It,
And they were just kind of coincidental or
I was like, yes. Well, I was showing that, Russell checked online and found out there were quite a few of those in there.
If you like either an observing challenge or a photographing challenge, apparently this one is sometimes referred to as the ghost galaxy or something like that. S74. Apparently it's very, very faint. It's kind of a beautiful spiral. Have you done this one before?
Yeah, last time too.
Okay.
I was stuck in that area, so I was there.
It's called the ghost, right? Isn't that what you call it? And apparently it's pretty challenging to get, but
What's roughly the size, what probably is the size of that?
I think it's about 7 or 8 arguments.
Pretty small.
Yeah, it's not a big one. I mean, it depends how far up you can get on the paint arms.
Well, I suppose that's true too. I have a good example of that.
I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful thin spiral or face on spiral. Interesting stars. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is the 90 Piscean. It's also sometimes called TV Piscean, which is a different catalog. It's actually right on the edge of the circle. One of the stars in that circle, that right asterism of the galaxy. Inside of the constellation. There's a picture of it right there. It's an extremely bright red star. I've actually looked at this one before. It's almost like ruby red, and it's a type of star that's not super rare, but not incredibly common either. These are C-type stars of carbon giants. Carbon giants actually are kind of interesting because if you look at the traditional Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, which is kind of the Rosetta Stone for understanding stars, they don't really show up too easily on it. They're actually right over here somewhere. They're very holistic. There's spectroclast down here, but you can also think of as temperature. And the hot stuff is down on this side, and the cold stuff is over here. And they are really far down to the cold side, probably temperature on the order of maybe only about 3,000 Kelvin, which is unimaginably hot, but not very hot compared to other stars. But they're really big, right? They're basically giant stars. And what they are is stars that have pretty much burned all their hydrogen, and they're probably large enough stars that they burn their hydrogen really fast, probably like maybe 30 to fuse all their hydrogen, and have also fused almost all of their helium, which is the product of carbon of hydrogen. And so when you fuse hydrogen, there's this, or when you fuse helium, it works by this thing called a triple alpha process. And the end of that triple alpha, those three fusions, is carbon. So carbon is sort of an intermediate stable state for stars. So carbon stars are super rich in this. But in the atmosphere of it, that carbon will bond with oxygen, becomes carbon monoxide, which is the same thing that a lot of smog in the Earth system is made up of. And the way that it kind of absorbs light is ends up looking really red. And one of the other things that's kind of interesting about carbon stars, not this one, but carbon stars in general, there's probably a lot of carbon that you see in planetary bodies originated in a carbon star.
The Sagittarius fall in that class.
I'm not sure. Antares? I don't know. It might just be a conventional red conventional. It might just be a, like a typical supergiant. I'm not sure. But what's kind of interesting about that carbon is, why is carbon important to us? It's really the basis for the way life on Earth works. The forms that act on these molecules that we are carrying our genetic material on. And so the carbon that was that's in your DNA and your body probably originated in a carbon star like this. Not this one, obviously, but one that's like this. Kind of lived out its life.
Antares is M1.
Is it one?
It's a M1.
M1. Right, so it would be about here on the first universal diagram. This kind of disrupts my understanding of the Hertzsprung Russell diagram. It's like, every other astronomy student, I learned the mnemonic for this, OBA, find girl, kiss me now, as the classes, so whatever that works out.
But now it's driving off sweetly because the extra classifications are added.
Do they have one for that now? I don't know.
Well, we didn't want to grow because we driving off sweetly.
Oh.
So you added that, to the mnemonic.
I guess I didn't catch that one back in the day, but that's good to know. I was trying to think of something on the way here. So it would be a fine gratification suite. Or it can be a
If you driving off sweetly. Or that.
Okay. And of course, you don't want to be sexist, so it will be a fun guy as well. Just make sure that, you have forward communication. All right, so this is, again, one of the kind of interesting start. And finally, something that I've always, or I find kind of interesting about Pisces, like I said, it's one of the constellations of the zodiac, which means it lies along the ecliptic, right along the line of the meridian, basically, what's the word I'm looking for here? Blanking on it. The equator, whatever.
Ecliptic?
The ecliptic, yeah, it's like the equator of the, if you project the equator out onto the space, that's what the ecliptic is. Which means that, and Pisces actually has within it what's called the first point of Aries. And I had meant to look up and see why it's called the first point of Aries, so it's in Pisces. I apparently forgot to do that. But what
I can tell you why, it's because it had shifted over the years.
shifted over.
And because of the precession, it now is in Pisces versus in Aries.
So I guess that would imply that the celestial coordinate system has been around long enough that when it was first set up, it still was in Aries.
Well, I don't know if celestial coordinate system even had anything to do with it. I think it was just that in ancient times, they knew that when they saw this first point of Aries start to come in the sky, it was time for rains, and it was time for spring. So,
Well, what the first point of Aries actually is, at least from a celestial navigation point of view, is it's the point of origin of the celestial coordinate system, right? So, horizon, ascension, declination, all that stuff. They have to, any coordinate system has to start somewhere. And there's really no natural starting point in space. So the starting point is the first point of Aries, which is a point in Pisces. You can kind of see it right there. There's a circle right there. There's that weird star that we just started talking about. about. There it is, right here. And what it is it's the position of the vernal equinox. So the spring equinox, it's the point where the sun crosses the celestial equator as it's ascending, right? Because because of the tilt of the Earth, the celestial equator and the ecliptic are offset from one another. So this is where the sun kind of passes along. Then there's also the first point of Libra, I think, which is the autumnal equinox. But anyway, that's where so if you ever wondered where the right ascension and declination system starts at, obviously it has it. That's the answer. If you go look at, like a planetarium program or something, and you put the coordinates up there, and you fiddle around until you find 0, 0, the planet's going to be anyways. It's also one of the things that when things like the minor planets are calculate the orbits, you look at the orbital elements, a lot of those measurements may be relative to the first point of Aries. Anyway, a little trivia about this. And finally, of course, because it is this is the other reason why I chose this, it's one of the zodiac constellations, so we also pay tribute to people that fall under various signs. So some of the people that are famous Pisceans include George Washington. That guy right there is John Snow. He was basically the inventor of epidemiology. First man in space was Pisces, and first woman in space was Pisces. That's Bugsy Siegel, famous colonel. He was Pisces. That's Wyatt Earp, famous lawman, famous Kansas, Pisces. Anybody know who that is? That's Jack Kerouac, famous author, Pisces. This guy was a famous Pisces. He was a hair model in addition to being a famous scientist. Doug Zavis, author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then finally, the real reason why I chose this, these are the famous fish. So, anyways, all right, well, it's a great sign, even if it means nothing. All right, so that's all I had to say. I will turn the floor over, Graham, to you, and
Is this the one we use? Snow was the inventor of epidemiology.
he was probably the first scientific epidemiologist. He was also one of the inventors of geographical information analysis. His kind of claim to fame was, they were having a cholera outbreak in London, and cholera was horrible. Also this, but it was very dangerous disease, and nobody really knew what it came from. So what John Snow did is he started mapping out where the cases of cholera were, and he found out they clustered around a particular pump, water pump. And people were getting their water from this water pump that is downstream from basically the sewer pipe, which kind of makes it painful to live in there, environmental regulation. And so people were getting cholera from water. So he famously took the pump handle off, so that people couldn't pump water anymore and stop the cholera epidemic. So that pump handle is now in
They all died first.
If you go to the Royal Academy of Sciences, which I had an opportunity to visit one time, in the intrigue foyer of this beautiful, ornate, very creepy building, is the pump handle that John Snow took off the pump there and keep it as kind of a display at the Royal Academy of Sciences. If you ever get a chance to go to the Royal Academy of Sciences, we can see it.
And one of the reasons I didn't ask about Snow was, as an epidemiologist, my dad's brother was president of the American Association of Epidemiology at one time. I should have known about Snow, but I didn't.
But he's more or less revered amongst epidemiologists and geographers.
Well, you'll have to bear with me a little bit. I've got a problem that have acquired over recent years. My wife has an excellent pair of hearing aids. My dog could hear me from a mile away, and so my voice has gotten pretty soft over the last few years. And if you can't understand me, either have a nice nap or holler to get my attention. Let's see what I can do here. I think we've got let's bring up my PowerPoint. Oh, right here is one. It isn't PowerPoint, it's the Apple Google. And let's see if we can start out my picture. That is a pretty familiar galaxy. The one that my brother and I did, and I think Bruce did most of the work on this one. But, and I have that up there just, this is a talking point before we start. But really what I'm talking about is my change in work from where I observe. Used to go down to PowerPoint all the time. Decided that is inadequate and get into that in a few minutes. My brother in Colorado is a pretty accomplished photographer. He married me because he spent a lot of money on photographic equipment over the years. His wife used to chastise him quite a bit. And in fact, one of his photographic recent experiences is this, which was kind of nice. He has a Hasselblad camera, has the same one they used, very similar to one that we used on the Apollo missions. And I can do this now without well, that's the Liza Canyon City. That's his neighborhood. He's quite a bit south of the canyon. Let me back up. I have a heck of a time doing this without advancing. And of course, you got light pollution, you got clouds, you got clouds. That's a storage nightmare in essence. But if you look carefully, you still see some stars out there above. And his friend Barbara was sitting there on the deck with him while he was doing that. And she did this with an iPhone, right? Stopped it. She really got this awesome stuff. I like this one. It's a pretty picture, I think. Well, let's get on with it. Why a new setup for us? Well, I mentioned Bruce is interested. And I guess we have to have reasons. Rational people have reasons for their actions. I'm not claiming to be rational, but I have a reason. Travel became pretty problematic for me. Going out to PowerPoint was pretty tough. My wife quite ill. And I hate to leave her home alone at night. In fact, I worry about having a meeting. But we've been married for 53 plus years, and even after we got married, she didn't let me travel out at night or be away from her at night. And now that she's ill, it's even worse. So PowerPoint has just gotten to the point where I couldn't do that anymore. So I try to build something at home. And, oh, shoot. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. That was for important. I couldn't get to the PowerPoint anymore. As you noticed from the presentation I did last year, I had an observatory in my yard, which was a disaster. Nothing about that was right. Fortunately, I think the best thing that happened to that observatory was when the wind destroyed it completely, and I could finally wash my hands and try to do anything with it. I thought that was just unusual. The other thing is, while I still wanted to try to do some meal work, I was actually trying to deal with things. Little AAPS over vertical star for clips and binaries. Even playing around with asteroid micros. Consider doing that, you still didn't get around to it. And my brother, of course, being a photographer with 3D, actually pretty much decided the deep sky stuff. And then the real reason, I guess, is the opportunity presented itself. Bruce, being a photographer, was quite interested in doing this sort of thing. His wife passed away a couple of years ago. He needed a new hobby. He had some finances, and so we could get into this, do something. But we thought, as we were going to move the observatory and set up a new observatory, there were a lot of considerations. Where do you do it? What do we use before we do it? And we started with C14X, which I had. That was a pretty good telescope, still in good shape. And they had the CGE Pro now, which frankly is adequate but not great now. SDNX and X70 camera, which is time to see some camera. It's pretty dated and not very good. The filter blew open the 808 reads it had an optics or pretty bad shape on it. And so anyway, that was all we had to start with. We needed to place the better skies. Now, my sister in New Mexico has 100 acres in the mountains, about 60 miles an hour, very beautiful dark skies. And she wanted to support us. She said she let us build a telescope on her place. Her husband was kind of interested, but his health wasn't good. And her son, very enthusiastic, he would get involved in building it and using it and maintaining it. The only problem is, he's up 60 miles away in Albuquerque. He had 2 kids, one was a toddler, and he just been promoted to a managerial position in San Diego Corporation. So he didn't get time to do anything. So we had to look elsewhere. And my brother was in Colorado, and he had a better area than we did, than anywhere else. The Wetmore area, just southwest of him, about 25, 30 miles, is now an official dark sky site. There's a lot of land available down there, and Blue Service is considered requiring some land and observatory there. It would have been a good site, but then he had that commute 25 miles to get out there. To change the filter, or doing it fast, just wasn't going to work out. Well, in the meantime, we would just look at places he decided that he wanted something better than what I was offering. And I had it. And he wanted a new scope, a new camera. But he decided to talk Plainwood. Now, I never talked to Plainwood, but made meetings before, visited. And I didn't even bother pricing that, and I knew it was way out of my league. Because it's expensive stuff. If he wanted to talk to Plainwood, so we did. And we finally decided that we would go to Plainwood. But we had another question where we go. Well, since we already decided where we're going to do the trip, I wanted to get my Celestron at Pueblo College. And there it is with some of this equipment. Some of these sensors, they don't have the camera, they don't have the adaptive optics, because I didn't think they wanted, they don't want to use it for visual anyway. I got funding to build the observatory in there in the process of instructing them all off roof now with this town. Well, our site selection, and I'll go through this pretty quick. We did the basic requirements of the skies, the references, support internet, security, reliability. Those are just basic things. So we looked at about 6 or 7 sites in New Mexico, and including the one that Eric Doser used. And we decided on what they call an Coyote. The Coyote is, I'll talk about this thing in a minute. The Helen Coyote Observatory is near Firetown, New Mexico, southwest of a very large radio telescope center in Mexico. Good touch stars, they've got little watch stars, management support were highly recommended. When Bruce started talking to him about the Plainwood, we started talking to Plainwood management, and they said, hey, look at Helen Kyle, the guy down there knows our equipment, he's good. Let's put our ourselves there with a pretty good recommendation. If you're going to buy Plainwood equipment, that one's does Plainwood, use it. The place was secure, we'll see that. We used our photobomb. About 200 megabyte download, which is good. Remember that one of our problems is it's not download the matters when you're doing a remote thing, because you could run that computer down there without much internet service. You gotta bring images from them to us, and it's the upload that really matters. But it's happening. And they got backup generators automatically fire up. And we have the UPS on us. This is the one of the little offices for us. Putting this on so that you can, I'm not going to get, I use the mouse, I get in trouble here sometimes. The rails on which it rolls off. That rail there, this blue rail there, it's just a white lens on it, the security camera. The interior, you can see where the wall height is. There, and everything below that rolls off. The guy standing on right there is the owner, manager, maintenance guy, and former cop. And so he's the security guy too. The lady standing at the far end is my brother's friend Barbara, and she's standing where they're going to put our beer. What do we have? Well, Bruce wanted to get a CDK 20, the 20 or 24, the 24-inch version of this, but we wound up with the 20-inch version. The $500 is a great amount, but it's the one that they almost always use for this size telescope. The reason he didn't get the 24 planes was one is going to take a couple of months to get it shipped. And he didn't want to wait. And the other is the fact that they're going to have to use a crane to put it in there. I think he was finally maybe having second thoughts about the bag. He was I didn't press it on that one, but we went with the 20, and that's more than enough. My wife almost had a heart attack. She got out of this disgusting until I convinced her that we weren't involved. She always was 600 monochromatic cameras. That's what she uses it for, I think, is it now?
Yeah.
And the Plainwood focuser, 9-position full wheel, rotated, and bunch of those. They black ones because we can't do it. It's $50.
There's one on too. And that bar one too. Black with it.
And then Bruce had a 400 millimeter Nikon telephoto lens. We didn't piggyback on him now. So we've got 30 arc minute field of view with the CDK 20 and over a 1 degree arc minute field of view with this telephoto lens, which pretty much set in that regard. And he's got the ASI 1600 camera, which is not a good camera. Focuser for the wheel. And he doesn't need to be more for it. This is the installation. On the left, they're installing wiring and cables and so forth inside the mount. Most of the wiring and cable goes inside the mount on the Plainwood stuff, so we're just hanging out there, it's going to get twisted and tangled and cause problems. On the right, they're setting it up on the scope itself on the pier, the UTA on the pier, and on the mount, I should say. Plainly sells us a couple of configurations you can buy as an Atlas or an Equatorial. And we got an Equatorial with Wedge. It just seems so much cleaner and neater to read it. Have it any other way. And of course, pretty good. You can see it's a fairly substantial size. It's good things to the size go well up there. Now, my wife had questions. How the heck are you going to run that thing? Sitting in Kansas, when it's in New Mexico. Are they going to have to run out because of the thing every time you're going to change something? And I don't know what to do from here. And you can see it's still, you can see on the left that the mound is one of those telephotographs. The guy to the left of us there, Scott put it away with set. You can see a couple of scopes or OTAs that covers over. Pretty sad. Anyway, Jane was really worried about how we were going to run that. And I logged into the security camera with my iPad and took this image while I was running it from my Mac. So, just to demonstrate to you that we could run one thing from home. You shot on the left here and elaborate outfit is, and you can see there are a couple of other scopes in the area. Well, I got it to look up here a little bit. That's a heck of a lot of equipment on that, isn't it? And then there are quite a few other scopes there now too. Well, a lot of equipment is great, but not without software. And our main piece of software really is NIME. Nighttime imaging in astronomy. It's free. Good price. That's for the imaging. We use Splashtop Business. My son used to use Splashtop at home occasionally. I didn't like it. This now is a good version. Splashtop runs on the Roll computer, and we have client versions on his and mine. And we can both log in concurrently, work together, use the phone, and then you'll see two persons floating around, one of his and mine. And it's amazing how much we can do working together that way. And a great way to learn. I've got some background that he doesn't have, and vice versa. On with the SkyX, never heard too much. Well, I've got it, use it. Bruce hated it, and I can't run it. And so else Delirium, and the Cut Seal, and that planetarium software, those three. None of it does a good job of linking those. So that's something to go to the planetarium packages, center it, go to NIME, click a button, and it downloads the advanced story. You've got everything like well, oriented coordinates. So you've got that, so it's really nice and really direct. PixInsight, another one we got now. Some of you are familiar with it, most of it probably never use it. It's primarily just for image processing, and it's used heavily for people doing these kind of work and pretty pictures. I only got two objections to the one is the learning curves for. They say steep learning here, but I think it should be called shallow, because normally knowledge on the vertical axis, time on the horizontal, it takes a lot of time to get a little knowledge. It's a shallow learning curve, isn't it? That's what you call it. And the other one is that's the only package of seen in astronomy where he doesn't like fixed. The minute he needs a fixed file, he converts it to his own internal format, and that's all he works with. And you've got to jump through the rules to take one of his files and put it back out as a fix, so other software can use it. That's kind of business. He's a big at all that. And then, of course, we've got Typo Tracker. Works pretty good. Canopus. Bruce wanted a sharp hat, and we got around to trying to get it, but he thinks it's too early to have. I guess others say it's decent for some things.
One thing that Sharp F has is it's got some great timed capabilities, so it will register very exact at the beginning and the end of your image.
Okay.
So it's a good timekeeper.
And then used for doing video work too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what we got, we're primarily, we're not ready for that yet. And then PhD guiding, PhD two guiding, that's pretty standard package for guiding, I guess. ASTAP, which is the astrometric stacking program, and then astrometric and a few other things out there. And the imaging one is quite a package. It's totally free. It's got what they call sequencer. Now, Bob Denny, a number of years ago, built a package called EC3 Dreams, and it used ASCOM, which is an interface that a number of people built. It'll run on Windows, but it'll interface with almost any astronomical hardware that you have. As long as you build a product for it, and most of those get. And so ASCOM is pretty commonly used across the board. And Bob Denny's package used ASCOM, called DC3 Dreams. He also had a thing called ACP, which he could build a script to run your telescope, run your filters, and so forth, for reading. Well, that was a $1900 package, last time I talked to him. And that was at the SAS conference in California. Just in the last month or two, Bob Denny's gone out of business. He's retiring. People who have the software continue to use it. He isn't going to support it. He says until Windows changes something, it's going to run. But anyway, this sequencer that we got, and I think I'd like it better. It's got some great capabilities. It's got a bunch of plugins for various purposes. Mine's got a good focusing routine. It uses the focuser to hone in and find it, where I can parallel that curve and find the bottom of that curve with about 6 or 7 images, and really get you to the sharp focus. One of the plugins is Focus, which uses that focus routine, but it looks at your image and excludes the non-stellar stuff. It adds non-stellar and makes some other changes to improve the quality of the images that you're analyzing for focus. There's a plugin called Orbit, and Bruce tried it out last night for the first time, didn't have any of it. But its purpose is you download the MPC orbit files and comet file, and always to look at that, get the positions, look at your time, look at the speed and direction of the objects that you're moving, then change the tracking sequence within the mount so they'll track on that object and let you charge free. And that's a good way of getting particularly good deep common images. You can sit there and track for quite a while, get common images. Now I haven't tried to use it yet.
Cytec actually will do that too.
They will, well, I mean, you can use it with, you can do it with PhD too, with this. But Orbis is kind of neat, because something called the Manila Hub, which is similar to what it is. He was up in NeoCP, and he had a page where they store Manila to store. They're updated with how later, whenever there's a change, I guess. Load that down, get resource, you select the ones you're interested in, and then you start to go look at that and say, okay, the time is thus, so we should be between here and here, and you figure out where the center of that is, we get a nail, and then we back off and say, okay, moving in this direction, this speed, we'll start here, and go this way, and get this long, with that keeping that height in the frame all the time. And, a iron rig will also calculate for you an exposure line based on magnitude, speed, and so forth, which is really, I haven't tried it yet, just downloaded it the other day. But that sounds like a real possibility.
Similar to NeoFixer, I think, probably. Although NeoFixer doesn't do all this stuff automatically, but it gives you all the information about whatever Neo that's kind of current, and they keep that most updated, so.
This thing, he visible, included instigating the split and everything else. There's a filter offset calculator that builds a list of all your filters and what offset is required to move. Focus offset is required to move from that filter. Because while they call those filters powerful, they aren't, not all of them.
Well, theoretically, it depends on the thickness. If the thickness is, and the only thing that depends on is the thickness
Yeah.
of the glass. So how much glass you're going through changes.
When your focus is getting down to the 7 micron level on that.
Yeah, a lot of things start affecting.
Then there's some others too, one that say, hey, I'm going to get my flats for you. And, so he'll sit there and go side to the door, get over to your flats and stuff together for you. Nice little thing. But it's quite, this is quite an image. It's pretty useful for a lot of things. You can control multiple LEDs and cameras and focusers and so forth with it. We occasionally run 2 instances. Fire up the Nikon some broad object that takes 31 useful degree field here, and put the CDK on the center of it to get it liberty set, and run it below that. The one main caveat is only one of you to do the sleep. Something I ever got it, that's, we would want to have it. I was over there. When I was carrying the list of, we turned in some observations that occurred. A number of mango asteroids and some number of needles. A number of those years, they weren't really fast. Apparently, littleness. And they want to compare what you're doing to what they've got, and they want what they have to do that with. I got pretty good residuals from that. I've read somewhere that if you can get consistent residuals less than 1.5 except if you're okay. Some people say, you have to be able to get all this place as good as that. 7.8. Almost everyone I have is 3.25, 1.5. I had a couple that were up close to 26. And anything that's 0.5 or more, which was a needle. And when a needle is, you begin to wonder if it's your problem or theirs, because the needles aren't quite as active.
The timing is usually the probably control people that.
With needles, yeah. And that's what surprised me, is we didn't have anything with the timing in there to calibrate it. And we still get it very .7.
Do you pick up time from their observatory time?
We've got a GPS thing attached to the computer, and then sync the computer to that.
Right.
And so, anyways, but if you do that, if you're starting the process, you're all right, usually.
The thing we noticed about maximum only starts on the second.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And-
When I was using it,
And
that's not good enough for nails.
well, no, I mean, but it only starts the exposure on the second, because I mean, it can't be the time.
Yeah.
Correct, but the problem is usually, and Russ and I did the satellites
time it says it was taking exposure to actually started. So it's like, I don't know, 24 or 25
Well, I noticed,
seconds.
oh, the stuff we're getting out of there, should have been there a second.
That's not
I
good.
hope we started in a second, not just
Yeah,
accelerating and grounding.
yeah, so I'm literally a maximum deal. That's one thing about Sharpcat. Sharpcat does a really good job on keeping that time track. So,
Well, that's one of the reasons I use Max and Dino before. I learned 9 quicker than I really learned Max. Max is not the trivial thing to learn.
and it's not all that great. I mean, it's kind of clunky.
It is. You might look at, man, sometime.
I would do that, except that then I have a lot of people that are just getting trying to learn how to do what we've got, then has to start all over, including me.
Yeah.
So, I've got to realize it's changed.
You'll find that Nine would be pretty easy to use.
I've used it before, although I never got all the components together at the same time.
So it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, good.
And a lot of improvements are continuing to be made. Well, normally, when you take an information, it's, I can send you all out to the concession stand by tomorrow night. But what we're gonna do is gonna try to log into the, New Mexico Computer Issues and say, ooh. Okay.
It has to be dark there.
It was a little bit there, okay, let's get the cursor back on this side. Come on, you gotta come back over now. There we go. Let me have it. There we go. Come on. There we go. Now, login failed. Oh, I didn't get connected to the internet, did I? Well, let's try. We should be able to find a way to get to the internet from here.
Yeah, you just get connected to the Wi-Fi without a password.
Yep. So we're trying to do Wi-Fi.
Run your browser or connector or library, say, accept and
Well, there's the library. We're connected to that. Come on. There it is. Connected. Okay. Now, I don't know why. This way will there, but I don't know to. And accept this. I'm spending as much time getting connected as I did spend using it. Now, log in.
You probably need to still open a browser up. It has
Oh,
captive portal or whatever.
browser just did it.
You have to accept the Topeka's terms of use.
Oh, okay. No access to librarian. No.
Yeah, if it came up, you're probably good then.
Okay. Try again here. Oh yeah. And go to all this other stuff. There's stuff up there. Oh, shoot. Oh, let me try this. I'm gonna have to change it back.
You can also, or for the display, you could just change it to mirrored instead of extended.
That's what I was getting.
Oh, okay.
Come on. There we go. Displays. Mirror. Meeting. Okay, now. Lots of things open all of a sudden. start losing things down. Come on. That's not slashed up. Let's close this down.
That might have been the captive portal, actually. But anyway,
Might be up.
you can just open a browser.
Now let's see if this is getting in there. Start up. Log in. There we go. CDK 20. And there's nine. I want to look at one other thing first. This is the plain lead interface. Tracks here. There's the sky viewer. Scope is parked right now. Check the temperatures of the residents. There's a lot of things you can do with this. Graph out a bunch of temperatures over time. And you can control the scope, do all sorts of things there if you want to. I don't know if I could do that. This is the setup that we've got going right now. Bruce is probably planning observing a bunch of squirrel. Okay, he's got it set up to look at our manifolds. Try to stick with our namesake, the dumbbell. There's full instructions. Sits there and it's going to wait until nautical dark or nautical dusk. Then the crew will be hammered -10, and that's being done right now. So that wouldn't take long. And astronomical dusk, he's going to wait till that. Make sure that the object or the target is. Oh, I don't want to do that. I didn't think I would do that. I don't want to do that. Make sure the target's above 30 degrees. And that the rotator is in the right position. And then here we'll take first the hydrogen alpha filter, 75 shots of 10 minutes each. Sounds like a long time. But one by one bedding, so I'll back up here a little bit. I guess I need to do a little bit of I got no control. I don't have no control. After it's finished waiting, it's going to switch to the old folder. Find it and so forth. So inside of the object. Run autofocus. Now you're ready to image. And once it starts imaging, it will do the, what do you change things?
You changed lots of stuff. Is there an undo? I need
Okay, well, okay, now these, the triggers in this fluid edition apply to the instructions down here. And it switches to hydrogen alpha filter, will take all these images. And he's going to loop until dawn, or the L2 dusk until 30. And he's got triggers. Anytime the temperature changes or the filter change, quit that now. He's going to refocus. And everything's images. And that's the whole series thing. I've set this up and done 7 or 8 different objects, 3 or 4 photos of each, and go to bed, run all night. Usually dawn shows up before it's finished, but it was pretty good. And that's really about all I wanted to show from there. So, you know, what we got going here. it's got some capabilities for, image transfer, all sorts of things like that. And, let's get back to this. What's your, Kyle, Bruce was gonna get on line with me, do this, but he had other things. We were gonna use it, he was gonna call me, we were gonna be on the telephone and let everybody hear our conversation, and he was gonna use that. I'm gonna try to do some energy, but it's not up there yet. That's the guy that passed around. That was a gift to my son about 15, 20 years ago. A howling coyote, paperweight. And, since we were at the howling coyote mobile years ago, I thought that was appropriate. And Bruce decided we would be our observatory, and coyote watcher. Well, my dog gets so she ignores by coyotes now when she hears. That was one of our early images, one of the very first, being Robert. Not too bad. This one's, I'm excited again, M27. The interesting thing about this, totally unprocessed. Just converted from hits to JPEG.
HL gives really great definition with background dust and that sort of thing.
Well, this is no darks, no flats, nothing honest, just pure. Now, the interesting thing is, I mentioned earlier, playing with video, there are people that are saying 2, 3, 5 minute, some are playing 6 minutes. This is a 10-minute shot. And I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You can use 10 minutes. Stars are nice, round. You would say, okay, 10 minutes is fine, let's try 20. I didn't have it. What's your time? That's 20. Now, that's a pretty good amount.
Yeah.
It'll track better. Look at the main difference between these. It's just the body control. Nothing else. Still cool, clean images. And now 10 minutes of old 30 is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going out. And I thought, first time I saw it, I might be a large that zoom in. And then I realized he didn't. That's right there. Right there on the fringe of the nebulosity. Which bad I don't know how far that up is. Same ones are from the television now. It's the same which is the oxygen moves out so much more than nebulosity.
Mm-hmm.
And combine the two just to see what's going on. See the red hydrogen oxygen. BRV combination has this ugly reaction that was fun to look at. Really the Nikon on there too. This is an image took some time ago with Nikon. I think you don't have to explain much what that is. I think most of you recognize the person. Bruce got up there with his, took a shot at Tom Lennon with his Hasselblad. And it's the one with the 3 meteors coming through it. And then he took one last night with the CDK.
How long a picture is that?
30 seconds.
Those are probably satellites.
Oh, no, they were, what? No, I guess he was early. I thought he was early at night.
Every third stack.
One thing you can tell is that they're consistently bright going across.
Yeah,
And it's
they're all the same length.
They don't, they don't have intermittent brightness values.
Not much. No, you're right. This is probably set of us. I thought he was doing it later at night where they made that mistake.
You're pretty lucky if they got 3 home TVs.
That's what I thought. son still maybe pick up the pedal when he was first day, you know, my son, running, so. Cover old dogs, you know, they say not old dogs. New tricks. Just can't teach them? I think he can. He had Bruce's age, my age, he had to come up with a number of 168. Now, that's a couple more dollars. And he's 12 years my junior, so, he's my baby brother. He started first grade here, started college. And I found to work with him, we're learning something every night. It's been an exercise. It's good training for this octogenarian brain, for the old brain. There's one problem. You hope you're going to get by one.
Yeah.
Well, let's just wrap this up with this image that Barb took in 1 minute. Most astronomers wouldn't like to see, but I think it's a good picture. That's about all I have.
Thanks, Graham.
Well, this is Canyon City, Colorado.
And famous for its prisons.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yep, Laurel Gorge, Route 1. The prison, Northwest. Well, I used to live in Canyon City when I was a kid.
So 30 miles south of Colorado Springs.
Well, the Colorado Springs Club over in Canyon City, California, triangle, and it's southwest of Springs, northwest of Pueblo.
I taught a field camp there one summer. That was a Katie field camp.
Oh,
It's kind of up toward the creek.
yeah. And Canyon Road. We have Family Canyon Road is a dangerous road going up there. The wood bridges that you cross the planks. Wheel on this plank, and a wheel on this plank, and then it turns. Now, this was back in the forest. Late forest, so it's a little better now. And I stopped somebody with a pickup camper and a trailer on the road, and then he go and I stopped and asked him, please not try to drive that road to well, anyway, I do a few more questions to start with.
So you were talking about getting into doing more AABSO type of work.
Yeah.
So what are you targeting there? What do you think you want to get into?
Well, I don't know about business and buying research. I've been following TCRB a little bit, just and nothing's
I
happening.
give this
Boy,
the first mouse. It's
That was when I was supposed to bond up here a year or so ago.
yeah. And so far it's pedaling right along and metal use. So what's the deal there?
Yeah.
All these predictions are kind of falling to the wayside.
Really right now, we've been at it a year and a year, and I'm still in the learning process. It's been monsoon season down there all year, it seems. I was gonna set up some stuff last night, I just wanted to, it was one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate tonight, is when you're energy. There's a lot of things you keep track of all at once. There's a image that shows a little snapshot of each of the images you get. So if I click on one of those, click on the image and it brings it up full screen or you can zoom in. You can also look at the quality of the image, click a button, and
I'll take another look at, I think, because I would like to find, I'm getting kind of sick of Master Deal, Doug George and
Yeah,
Jeff.
Doug George is the,
Yes, yes.
they expanded it.
Well, one thing he does is he takes care of his cameras with his software,
Yeah.
and he neglects other people's.
It's bad.
You can't run software without having it be kind of universal, so,
Not that kind of stuff.
you know.
That's one nice thing about that, you can sit there and, we ran into a problem with, the CD guy. Image size.
Give it what?
Image size vary from one shot to the next.
Oh, really?
Not really one shot to the next, one mic to the next. Found out that instead of using the native driver, booster station to the next time.
Oh, okay.
And it's like when you slide the camera, and
Plus there's a speed difference too, that there's a speed difference too, that is downloaded, not downloaded.
just, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
so I will look very careful now to see if the native driver.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should get away from that studio. But and Nina would be an obvious choice. But the other thing is too, is SharkCap is nice. SharkCap is a little honky though when you're trying to set up, I think, what you need for scientific imaging versus pretty sure.
Well, see, that's the one of our problems, is we're overwhelmed, and we both have both kinds of imaging.
Right, right.
It's too much variety, we're eliminating well.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
and then most of our learning is not, it's not, it's what we're doing with our
Oh, Pixel side is really massive.
and there's so much you can do with it too.
It's a very well respected software, but it also has as you say, a very immense learning curve.
Yeah. And then they create the best for
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I found is it has some facilities for analyzing images, and it'll plot out, you can load up a whole bunch of images, and it'll sit there and show a plot of how many stars are in each image, what the HFR corresponds to a full web at max in most other applications. For each star, each group, image, and
So what's your average pull with that max then for most of your images?
we're at about 3.
3? Yeah. Because we're at 4. I'm at 4.
Yeah.
My, 4.
Full web at max, no,
Yeah.
I don't, we use the which is,
How's that?
well, HFR is, you go that horizontal line across where we have max.
Okay.
Well, that horizontal line has half of the flux of it and half of the flux.
Okay, so you're talking about actual seeing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's the cross-sectional circle that you get
Right,
at
yeah.
the radius of
Yeah.
that circle.
That would be a kind of different way of expressing the whole of that.
It is. And the thing is full width at max,
You're right. Depending on the narrow-base.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
HFR is a little more critical in its
Yeah.
analysis. It took me a while to adjust to that. I like it.
Yeah, I went through mine. I mean, I get some nights where my pull with that max is about 3.5. But normally it's 4 to 4.5.
Yeah. I'm not really cool with that max. I also
Yeah, well, and I was trying to figure, and it's more difficult to kind of translate that to see, for full with that max. It's roughly about, it's factor of 1.5, or half. If you take the number and then you half that, that's getting you close, although it's a little higher.
Yeah.
Half. You see.
life is life. Stars is stars, the skies,
Well,